make money, and that there's an extraordinary level of sacrifice on the road to success. So how is it that investors like us who didn't start out with much money and who don't rely on banks and credit, how is it that we can increase our income and build our wealth in a way that doesn't require us replacing one full-time job with another while still enjoying the things in life that matter most to us? That has always been the big question, and this podcast reveals the answers. I am Carrie Lake, and this is the Investor Warrior.
Are we ready?
We're ready.
Hi, everybody. This
Hey, guys.
is Howie and Carrie Lake, and this is the Investor Warrior.
All right, you guys, welcome back to the show. It is Friday today, TGIF. Let's see. Last time Howie and I were on here, we talked about which one were we talking about? The 10 things that we've learned in the 10 years of flipping properties. And one of the things that we said we were going to do is do a whole separate show on hiring the right contractors, because we've been working with our contractors now for, the last 6 or 7 years.
6 or 7 years, steady. But we've gone through, we've worked with a lot of different contractors.
Yep, we have. But our contractors are like family to us. Our subcontractors, our contractors. And I've been asked this question before, is how can you find good contractors? The very first flip we did, we got really lucky with the contractor. In fact, I still keep in touch with him. He lives in Georgia and he's a general contractor up there. And I didn't interview him. I just found him. I liked him. I liked his personality, and it turned out okay. We ended up using him for a few others projects. And then I think we used him down here in Florida a few times. But you never want to rely on luck when you're hiring a contractor.
You haven't always had that luck, have you?
No. Yeah. luck will run its course. And hopefully we have enough Wi-Fi, because it says that our Wi-Fi is not working very well. So anyways, hopefully you guys can hear us okay. So what we wanted to do is go through our process of hiring contractors, because it's so important to hire the right contractor from the start. The most stressful situation you can get yourself into is when you hire the wrong contractor. It can cost time and money and cause a lot of stress, and you want to avoid that. And the more you can work with your contractor throughout the years, you're going to get to learn to know their prices, how they work. You can establish a schedule. It's going to make your projects much more seamless and efficient when you're using the same people.
Right. You can also evolve the process with them too. So
which we have.
Yeah, work together to get better.
Yeah.
On both sides.
Yeah. So I have a list of 19 questions here that you can use to interview a potential contractor. Now, you don't have to use these questions, all of these questions, every time you hire someone. Like if someone's coming over to do like a $200 job, you probably don't need to run them through all of these questions. These questions are really for the big projects, or if you have
the full rehab.
Yeah. Or if you have a general contractor that you think you're going to be working with into the future. So you can kind of take these questions, and you can take some of them and you can take all of them, whatever you feel you need to fit your situation when you're hiring whoever you're going to hire. So question number 1, I always ask them if they are licensed. And if they are licensed, I want to have a copy of their business license. For obvious reasons. You want a licensed person working at your job site. So whether it be a general contractor, a remodeling contractor, a handyman. I mean, we don't even use unlicensed handymen at this point.
What would you say is the risk to not using someone licensed? Because that happens all the time.
Sure. Well, there's a reason why they haven't gotten their license. Either they're cheap or they're lazy or they don't want to get it. I mean, having a license is the professional way of doing things. So I want to work with a professional who is licensed. It's just they've taken that extra step to get themselves licensed.
What about legalities?
Well, you're going to reduce your risk of liability if they're licensed. That's going to lead us into the next question. Generally, if they're licensed, I want to also know if they are insured.
Okay.
And what are they insured for? How much are they insured for? That's going to be really important as far as liability, because if you have people working on your project and they're not insured, and one of their let's say one of their contractors gets hurt in your house, you could be liable for that if they don't have any insurance.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to add anything?
No, this pretty straightforward stuff.
Okay.
License insurance. I get into the more functional stuff.
Okay. So one of the things we do ask for is so if this is a bigger project, or we think we're going to be working with them in the future, is we want to add our LLC or corporation, whatever company you're purchasing this property with. We want to add that company as additional insured onto their insurance policy. And that does a couple of things for us. That covers us with the increased liability that we have with workers working in our house. And it also allows us to get notifications when they renew their insurance or they don't renew their insurance. As additional insured, I'm going to get something in the mail that says, hey, ABC Construction renewed their insurance policy and you're still additional insured. Or vice versa. If they don't renew, I'm also going to get a mailer saying, hey, ABC did not, they let their insurance expire. And now I'm going to call them and say, hey, why is your insurance expiring? You can't work on the job site until your insurance is back.
So I have a question on this, because when it comes to the insurance world, I mean, the language that they use, I mean, is literally not English. I've always struggled with insurance just in general. What does that mean? Additionally insured to what, for what?
I think we should have Colleen come on, our insurance agent, to talk about that, because that's a really good question. I don't know exactly. I just know that it's going to cover us. Or it can cover some of our liability if someone were to get hurt in the house. Okay. Because we are additionally insured. So if someone's going to sue us, we fall under their insurance policy as well. But I think that's a question. This always gives us more ideas for other people to come on. I think that we should have Colleen come on and talk about insurance, because there is a lot of questions around insurance, and I feel like you don't get those questions answered until you have an insurance issue. And that's
that's not the time.
That's not when you want to get your questions answered, right? You want to get your questions answered before you take the insurance policy out, not when you need the insurance policy. Right. Yeah. And so Colleen has actually reached out to me in the past asking to come on the podcast. So maybe we'll have her come on.
So this is funny. This is the entrepreneur's answer to some things, maybe even a lot of things. I don't really know why. I just know I better blessed do it, or I could be in trouble.
I've been told to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it warrants digging into a little bit. So maybe we can do that later. All right.
Sure. Okay. So number 3, I want to know if the contractor is buying the materials, or am I, the customer, required to purchase the materials? Okay, there's a couple different reasons why there.
Yeah, this is a tricky issue.
I need to know if they have enough funds to cut. This is going to tell you a lot about the contractor that you're working with. Do they have the funds to cover the material up front? If they're a general contractor, like here in Florida, a general contractor, in order to get licensed, it's actually a pretty, it's a pretty lengthy process.
Yeah, it's tough here.
I believe you have to work under another GC for 2 years. You have to take a test. You have to pay fees, but then you also have to have at least $100,000 bond.
Yeah. And capital.
And you have to have some sort of capital that you have to prove. And so I want to know, do they have the capital to run multiple projects? Because generally general contractors might be working on more than one project than my own. But I also need to know that they're not stealing from Peter to pay Paul, which contractors will do, which we had someone do that. So I want to make sure that they have their own capital, that they can purchase the materials. I think too, there's also a liability factor that plays in here. If I were to, now I know, I heard a story one time of a investor who, I guess he pulled his own permit for a roof. He was going to replace the roof. He bought all of the roofing material for the roofers. So he was like subbing this out.
So the client did. Was he acting as his own contractor, his own general, which you can do, right?
Yeah, but he doesn't have he didn't have a general contractor's license, I believe, and I also believe that he didn't have insurance. Because in this case, he bought the materials for the project. One of the roofers fell off the roof and died, and he was sued for it because he was the one that bought the materials, not the roofing company
Wow, that's why I said
or
this
the
is
roofers.
a really tricky issue.
Yeah. So, okay, if you're going to buy toilets and sinks, okay. But if you're going to have people working on electrical or plumbing or roof, something that could be potentially dangerous, you want the contractor purchasing the materials. I'm not going to buy a breaker for my electrician to install. He's going to buy that breaker and he's going to install it, because then there's going to be less liability if he were to get injured.
And this gets back to the whole issue of capital that we were talking about in terms of contract requirements, and why certain states are much more stringent about this than other states. And Florida's gotten really stringent about it because of all the issues that have happened here with hurricanes, and then recently with that building that collapsed down in Miami. And things like that. So it just keeps getting tougher and tougher and tougher. But the real issue here with contractors buying their own materials has to do with whether or not they have the working capital to do that with. And this is a telltale sign. That's why this is important in this conversation. If somebody wants you to buy all the materials, they basically are saying, I don't have the capital to do that with. Because the way the business cycle works is a contractor is providing a service, generally provides certain chunks of that service, and you pay them after they do the work. So, you'll start with a deposit, and I'll talk about deposits as a sign of robbing Peter to pay Paul as well. But you pay them a deposit, and then, that gives them some capital to get going. But at some point, they're going to outstrip the deposit. They're going to get the work done, right? That means they're having to pay for their materials. They're having to pay for their labor. And then at certain intervals that you'll work out with them, you'll give them what's called a draw. And so that draw then, pays them for the work that they've done. They have to have the capital to survive that period. They have to be able to pay for those things. And a contractor that can't do that is a red flag. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah. You don't want to have a starving poor contractor at your job site. We had, I think I mentioned on the last video, the red flag finally was when we finally fired this guy, was we had just paid him a deposit and he didn't show up.
It was a draw.
It was a draw. And he didn't show up the next day. And I asked him why he didn't show up to the job site. And he said he didn't have any gas money to get to the job site. And I was like, but we just gave you a draw. Where is this money going? So
telltale sign, they are robbing Peter to pay Paul. Can't afford gas to get to the job site.
Is when I went to the job site and I fired him.
So let me just kill this right now. So we're going to keep going back and back to it. The robbing Peter to pay Paul syndrome comes in when contractors are working with multiple clients, right? And contractors, it's a service business. It's not Google. They can't scale infinitely. They only have so many people. They only have so much time. And so they only have so much time and space to service so many clients. But the lure of them taking on a new client even when they really are stretched thin or they're behind with you as a client is because of that deposit that we just talked about earlier. They're able to take in that capital from that deposit and use that capital in their mind to try to catch up on this. And as soon as they catch up on this, I'll get to that. It is almost like a Ponzi scheme in the financial world where they just get into the cycle that they can never get out of. And that's one of the reasons why this is such an important issue. In
fact, we purchased a property a few years ago from someone who had an insurance claim on a roof, and the insurance paid her the money to replace the roof, and she gave that money to a roofer, and the roofer took off. And he did this with multiple homes. He ended up.
Well, that's just fraud. That's a little bit different. Yeah, that's a little bit different.
It is a little bit.
And we've all heard these horror stories, right? But I'm telling you, this robbing Peter to pay Paul thing, it isn't fraud necessarily. It is just really bad business practice. It is a contractor that has gotten behind and is trying desperately to catch up.
I don't know what this guy's deal was, but he was obviously very behind.
Okay.
The one that stole all the money.
Well, no, that's fraud.
Yeah,
I mean, you got to make a distinction between.
True.
You got to make a distinction between somebody who's just ripping people off,
right,
and somebody who's just not managing things well.
I don't know what
and the result may feel the same to the client, right? You're putting out money and you're not getting anything back, and you feel ripped off. But I'm explaining what happens to well-intentioned contractors who are trying their best. They're trying their best. They're just not good managers, is really what it comes down to. And you obviously don't want to hire that. So these are the signs. So when you ask the question, what was the question? Where did this question even come from?
Do you buy the materials?
Do you buy the materials, or is the customer required to purchase? It's a little bit of a trick question.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to buy the materials from a legal standpoint, but I want to know what your answer is, because the way that you answer that question is one of the ways I can tell whether or not you have the capital and are managing yourself like a real business.
Right.
Okay, that's it.
Okay. Number 4, can you pull permits, and what kind of permits? So if I'm working with someone who, let's say, is a general contractor, I want to know what kind of permits he can pull versus maybe it's just a subcontractor who can only pull a permit for his specialty. So when I'm building my power team, I want all kinds of contractors that can pull the right permits. And so I need the right people on the team.
Right. Yeah. And this kind of gets back to the whole issue of licensing too, because we have an audience here that's all over the country, right? So
that's true. So we're in Florida.
Yeah. So Florida, a little bit more complex. We have different layers of contractors. So we have like remodeling contractors that can get licensed and they can get insured, but they're able to do like cosmetic stuff. So they're the ones that can replace the toilets and pull off cabinets and do those kinds of things, but they can't pull permits for structural things, not even like an interior wall. That takes a different level of general contractor. And then the next level of general contractor, and I'm not going to name the exact names because I'll say them wrong, but let's say the next level can only build up to 3 stories. And then there's another level that can do up. And so you have to know what kind of contractors you're dealing with based on what state you're in. So we've starting to do work more around the country, and we've just run into 2 states that we're working in where the criteria to get a contractor's license is literally paying a fee and filling out an application, and you now can build anything. Even a high rise. It is really scary.
Like you don't have to have any experience, knowledge.
Yeah. So why I wanted to bring this up is because we have to remember we're not just talking to people in Florida. So you want to check in your state to make sure how easy was it for this person to get a quote unquote contractor's license.
Well, we're going to go through some of those questions to check their experience level. But additionally, in some states, if you're not owner occupied, you can pull your own permit. And if you, and in other states, you can't pull your own permit if you're non-owner occupied. So here in Florida, if this is an investment property and it's not our primary resident, we can't pull the permit. You have to have a GC license or the right kind of license to pull the permit. We can't, as owner occupants, pull a permit on a non-owner occupied.
Can I tell a quick story?
Sure.
I learned this really the hard way in Florida back in 2004. So I owned at that time a 37 unit complex, if you will, on 4 pieces of property on a street in West Palm Beach, Florida. And 3 of the properties were next to each other, and 1 was down the street, but that's kind of neither here nor there. But just to give you an idea of what was going on, they were rentals properties, and like we had 2 hurricanes back to back, Francis and the other one.
2004.
2004. Some people. It was when Florida got hit with 4 hurricanes, one right after the other, and one was Charlie. You were
4 in 2004.
Yeah, and you were in grad school, college, right? So. I own this property in West Palm Beach, and it destroyed half the property and displaced the tenants, meaning displaced means they couldn't live there anymore. So we're scrambling, right? My father at the time was managing the departments for me, right? And my father was a general contractor. He was retired at that point. But he was a general. Your dad was a general. Yeah, but he was a general contractor in California. Yeah. Well, California has different rules, so he knows what he's doing pretty much. So we immediately just went to work, kind of owner builder.
Right.
We got red tagged by the county. Now, think about this. Everybody's property is destroyed. Yeah. Everybody's in dire straits. The insurance companies aren't getting back to anybody. Nobody can do anything. You're in a completely frozen state, right? It's like a microcosm of COVID in a way. Like everything's just frozen.
Well, everything's backlogged. Everything was backed up.
Everything's backed up. There's not enough contractors. There's not enough supplies. There's not enough anything. And still, these wonderful people at the county came and red tagged us and I said, hey, it's my property. And then they said, it's not your primary residence. Right. It is a investment property, and therefore you cannot be owner builder. And so that's really important to understand in certain states as well. Yeah. And so we had to live through that nightmare. And
don't get red tagged.
That story goes on for about 9 months, and I won't bore you with it.
You never want the red tag on your property.
It was brutal.
So, okay. Number 5, do you attend all the inspections? So if I'm hiring a contractor who's going to pull their own permits and we're paying them to do the job, I fully expect them to be there at all of the inspections. It's not going to be me who's going to be waiting for the inspector all day. It's going to be one of their workers waiting for the contractor all day, because that is a big waste of time. And you want them there when the inspector shows up, because if the inspector says, hey, this wasn't done correctly or that wasn't done correctly, then they need to be there to hear that and to fix it.
Well, yeah, because at that point you're having very technical conversations, right?
Yeah.
They could be structural conversations. I mean, I might be able to answer them, but I might not. You're certainly not going to be able to answer those kinds of technical conversations. So you need the contractor there that knows how to answer those technical questions and get things through.
So how many people are on your crew? How many crew members will consistently be working at our house? Now, you can have a general contractor that's just a one-man show, or you can have a general contractor that's got 30 people working for him. I want to know how big their company is, and how many people are going to be at that property at any given time. So I remember that, I think it was one of the projects we did in Georgia when we were consistently working with Antonio. That was the one we got really lucky with. He just ended up being a fantastic contractor.
Good guy.
And the day after closing, went to the house. They were, these contractors, there was like 10 of them just like demoing, and there was shit everywhere. And I was like, this is awesome. There's like 10 of them just going crazy at the house. And they had that thing demoed in like a day and a half. I didn't know that there was going to be that many workers there because I didn't ask the question. Again, I got lucky, but he had like all of his crew there at my house giving me VIP attention to make sure that this house just got done quick.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. So if you have a general contractor that is a one-man show, you might have to hire more than just that person if this is a big project, or he just might not be the right fit for the right project. I'm not going to hire a handyman for a big renovation, even if I don't have to pull any permits. If it's just him, it's going to take more time, right? I want someone who's got other people that are going to be working there. Now, Eddie consistently has 4 or 5 people at our house at any given time.
It's interesting too. I'll also throw this in as a little bit of a wild card. So we just finished up a big rehab, really beautiful, super successful. One of our, actually a home run for us, I would say. And in all our years of doing rehabs, everything really worked out well. We had a beautiful rehab. It was on a lake, that kind of thing. I mean, you should do a show on that one.
Sure.
And Eddie is the contractor that we've been working with for years.
I've been trying to get Eddie to come on, but he doesn't like being in front of the camera. So I was like, Eddie, you need to come on to the show. And he's like, nope, absolutely not.
So I'll try not to draw this story out. So we had everything ready. So I know Eddie, we met before the project while we were still in contract. We started laying out the schedule.
The
schedule. Did I say schedule? I said schedule.
You said schedule.
I said schedule.
You're so fancy.
It's my fancy shirt. Yeah, my fancy shirt.
Fancy
so, we laid out the schedule. We had everything going. We were hounding her to give us finishes. Finish decisions and things like that. We were on top of it. And just like Carrie was talking about a minute ago, we closed down that house and the crew was there and it was going. Interestingly enough, on that cul-de-sac, there's a developer that actually developed those homes, and he owns 3 of the 4 homes still, except for the one for this home that we were rehabbing. And he's a commercial guy. He's been around a long time. He's an investor. We'd never met him before. He runs the HOA. So we at one point needed to contact him. And long story short, we developed a really good relationship with this guy. He wants to be an investor with us. He wants to do projects with us. We've met with him. Great guy. But that came from how impressed he was about how quickly we moved through that project, because he was watching. He saw that the contractors were there. He saw that there was no dead time. He saw that there were people moving. He saw things coming in and out. Do we talk about cleanliness and all that in this conversation? Okay, we'll go into that in a second. So it can have more benefits than just obviously moving things quickly and getting things done efficiently. So
okay, I'll let you cover number 8. You're
are we at 8 already?
Stickler on this one.
Are we at 8 already?
Yeah.
All right. How many are we doing?
19.
I thought this was the 10 things. No, it's not the 10 things. Oh, okay.
No.
All right, we better move. Okay, what are we talking about?
Go to number 8.
Oh, do you ensure that the job site is picked up?
Did you hear me already say twice? Go to number 8.
Okay.
Go to number 8. You are a stickler on this one, so I'm going to let you cover this one.
Number 8. Do you ensure that the job site is picked up at the end of the day, every day?
Let me just reframe this question. So I use Howie's office once in a while, like today, because he just has better lighting in here and my office doesn't. And so I come in here, I do my podcast shows, and then I leave. And if I move this from the right side of his computer to the left side of his computer, and I don't put it back onto the right side of his computer, and it doesn't matter what it is, he'll come in here and he'll be like, you moved something in my office. And I'm like, oh my God, it was just this, right?
Don't even get me started.
Put things back where you found them. And so as soon as I leave the office now, I'm like, oh my God, what did I move? Well, I got to put it back. It has to be exactly can't be moved an inch.
You're making it sound anal, and I'm not really.
No,
it's just that on a construction site.
Well, you are a stickler about this and everything that you do, and it's good. It's good because you're organized and you're clean and you know where things are. And at the job site, this is really, really important.
Well, the job site is just critical. I mean, we show some of these job sites and, there's stuff everywhere. There's paint on the grass. Mm-hmm. There's boards with nails. There's all kinds of things. And, it really is. There's a laundry list of issues that this causes.
Yes.
Okay. First and foremost is probably a safety issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be the biggest issue, I think.
Second, it is one of those things that it creates an environment of messiness. Mm-hmm. So as the different workers and the different subs come in and those kinds of things, when they see the job a mess, they just, I think subconsciously are like, well, nobody cares here.
Yeah.
Okay. And then everything just cascades and starts getting messier and messier and messier and messier. It's the broken window effect, right?
Yeah. The broken window effect. If you have a building with a broken window, it's naturally going to attract other broken things like vagrants and vandalism and it's just going to attract what it is. And so if you have a messy job site, it's going to attract messy workers and it's going to cause messiness in their work, which you don't want, right?
Yeah. And
you want your workers to be meticulous. You are, and one of my favorite quotes, which I think comes from Shauna, Greg's wife, in her book, and I don't know, she might have gotten it from somewhere, but she says it all the time, is you are in everything, you are in anything what you are in everything. If you're not meticulous on your job site, you're probably not meticulous with the work that you're doing in the job. Yeah.
Exactly. And it just reflects on everything. I mean, you may have potential buyers that are watching your job site when they come by.
Absolutely.
And what impression are they getting about what's going on? And just not to mention just the rework and, these kinds of things cause rework. You can have dirt that's trampled on the finished floors. I mean, it just goes on. That is
my biggest pet peeve when I go into a job site and I can see debris on the brand new floors. And they could be wood floors where now it's scratching and scuffing them. Like there's nothing that gets my goat more.
So it can be very costly.
I said it.
Goat. Get my goat.
I said it. You didn't even notice I said it.
I didn't because I'm old. Now you're old. Now
what
you're
really gets
old.
my goat.
Carrie just had a birthday this week, and
I'm 1 year older.
She's now officially old.
So I'm gonna say old-fashioned things like, what really gets my goat is when I go into a job site and there's stuff all over the brand new floors. Can't happen. No.
So I just can't overstate this enough how important it is. And let me tell you something. Contractors are messy. They're just messy. And you can have the best guys. I mean, with our contractor, it has been a long haul.
I think it's just a messy industry.
Well,
right?
it's two things. It's two things.
And they're tired at the end of the day.
It's a messy job. They're working hard.
Yes.
They're trying to keep up. Yep. One little problem puts them behind. Yep. So the next thing you know, they told their wife they were going to leave at 4:30 and be home by 5. And now it's 5:30 and they're still dealing with the problem that they ran into 2 hours ago. And, when they finally get it knocked out, they just leave. And so, there's all kinds of reasons for it, but it's unforgivable. Like it just, if you don't have time to clean up, then you don't have time to do the work. That's my motto.
Yeah, that's true.
It's because it's part of it.
So we are, I would say that we are constantly, even though we tell them all the time, we are still hounding them on if the job site is cleaned up. We're going and doing inspection, surprise inspections. We'll come and just check it out.
Yep. And that was one of the things the new investor noticed. Because by the way, just so happened,
neighbors are going to notice your clean job site.
His retired parents live right next door. in the home that he owns, and he was watching all this.
The worst thing you can do is piss off the neighbors too. You don't want to piss off your new neighbors.
That's right. That's right.
You want to make friends in the places that you're going to be renovating houses in, because you never know when a neighbor's going to come over and say, hey, we just saw that you bought this house. Do you want to buy my house? Right? You want everything to be just meticulous and clean and picked up and organized.
Okay. We beat that to death.
We really have.
Number 9.
All right.
Do you work with your own subs?
Okay, so do you work with your own subs? So this might just be a one-man show. Does he have subs that he works with? Do I need to work with the subs? So for instance, we have a main remodeling contractor now. He can't pull permits for us, but he can do a lot of the cosmetic work. But now he also has resources that we can use that are subcontractors. So he has shared his AC guy with us who will pull the AC permit. He has shared electricians with us, landscapers with us. And it's not necessarily that, and he's coordinating the work. And a lot of times we're just paying the sub directly. So it's not like he's kind of acting as a GC because he's scheduling it, he's coordinating it, but he's not paying the subs. We are.
Yeah. So let me clear this. Let me try to put some clarity on this. So in the construction world, you have general contractors and you have superintendents.
Right.
Okay. And superintendents are basically like job site managers. And so at this scale, you're doing single family homes. This is not a big like commercial unionized job where we're building high rises or anything like that. This is single family rehab work. Maybe there's a couple permits here and there for roofs and repiping and things like that. And maybe we'll add some walls and stuff like that. But it's a smaller scale, right? Now, with that said, don't get me wrong, you still have all the same phases of construction as you do in a high-rise building. It's the same thing, but you're not dealing with, that level of complexity.
Right.
So, what were we talking about? I lost my train of thought.
It's Friday.
I know it's Friday.
Do you work with your own subs?
Yeah, but what did I chime in about? I completely forgot what I chimed in about.
The difference between general
contractors. Yes. Sorry.
Ooh, good thing I'm here.
I know. Okay, I am the old one. Okay, so
it's okay. It's been a long week.
So because it's what we do, and we become better and better at it, and more competent at it, we act as our own general contractor. Okay, so we hire the main contractor, and that main contractor acts.
Acts.
Oh
my gosh. ACTS.
Acts as
pronunciation.
What we would call in the larger construction world as a job superintendent. So he's doing a lot of coordination and things like that. So, but we do hire, for the most part, there's little exceptions, we do hire the subcontractors directly as well. So we're contracting them. We're asking them all the same questions, by the way, which is a good point.
Yeah.
A lot of the same questions, maybe not on 19 of them, but maybe 10 out of the 19 of them. A lot of and you can see which questions would be applicable to the subcontractors. So your plumbers, your electricians, your roofers, things like that, right? So just to be clear about that. So our main contractor acts as very heavily, and he adds a lot of value as a coordinator and a job site superintendent. We're the GC.
Well said.
I'm done.
Well said.
Trying to reassemble my brain here.
Okay. How many projects? Next question. How many projects do you have going at any given time? Okay. If this is a general contractor with 2 subs and he's already got 2 projects going, he might not be our guy because he just doesn't have the capacity. We want someone who is in there on the day after closing and who's going to be in there until we finish the project. We don't want them taking a day off because they had to go, go to someone else's project. We want them in our project.
And you might hear answers like, "Oh, well, I'm going to finish up this project," and that's when you start to get, a feel for what that really is.
Yeah.
Do you
what's
find
their
that
capacity level?
Do you find that they are forthright in their answers about this particular question?
Again, I think just going through all of these questions, you're going to get a good idea of whether they're forthright or not. I just use kind of my intuition when I'm hiring new contractors. Now, we've been using the same contractor now for the last 6 years. And so when we have a project come up, he's very forthright about what he's got going on, and he can usually move stuff out of the way for us. But that's why it's so important to find someone who's going to become like family to you, who you're going to keep working with over and over and over again through the years, because you're going to become their VIP client and they're going to move things around for you, not the other way around.
Yeah. So you can kind of look at these questions as this is how you get started. And then from there, you build deeper relationships.
Correct.
But we do have to use these questions when we move out of the area.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're doing projects in these other areas that we're doing now, and we need to find different kinds of contractors, new ones and things like that, then this list comes back out.
Yeah. Okay. So number 11, will there be any periods of time when someone won't be at the house working?
This is huge. Tell them why.
Well, I mean, time is money in this business.
Number one.
If you're not going to be there at the job site, why?
Right.
If it's something, a delay that I caused, well then, okay. Right. I forgot to order the cabinets and now they're on back order and there's no work that can proceed. Well, obviously there's going to be no one at the house, but I don't want no one at the house just because they took the day off or they had to go to someone else's house. I remember, I'm just thinking back to that first project, that first flip we did 10 years ago. And I just keep thinking back to this because there were so many lessons learned on that one. We made so many mistakes on that one and so many, but lessons learned. And
this is that you got lucky with the contractor.
Yeah, we got lucky with the contractor. And I remember it was right down the street from us and I was there all the time. I mean, when you first start flipping, you make the mistake of, you don't make the mistake, but you might be at the project more often.
You're more compelled to be there more
often.
often.
And so I was there all the time. And I remember showing up one morning and the GC showed up and none of his crew were there. And I'm like, hey, Antonio, where's your crew? Where are the guys? And he's like, Cady, I love
from Venezuela.
Cady, that's a really good question. And he's like on the phone, like, where are you? You're supposed to be on this project. The client is here and no one's here. And he was on it. And I guess they had some delays and they were just running late.
Stuff happens.
But I want to make sure that if I drive, and I'm going to tell them, listen, I'm going to be driving by this house and it's right down the street from me and I might have some surprise inspections going on. Like I want to make sure that there's people there. Can you guarantee that there's always going to be someone at that job site if there's no, delays?
Yeah, this question is really actually has two objectives. One is it's a general question, but really what the question does is it sets the expectation.
Yes. Oh, setting expectations is so big when it comes to hiring. Yeah.
The other reason why this topic is important about nobody being at the house is that vacant houses are risky houses.
That's true too. Yeah.
And you want to just rattle off really quickly why that is.
Why vacant houses are risky?
Yeah. Top three.
They're vacant. You've got a vacant house. I mean,
things disappear from vacant houses.
Things walk off.
Vandalism happens in vacant houses.
Youths. There could be youths running around. Youths running around.
Youths in the neighborhood.
Those youths. I mean, it's a vacant house.
Did you say ute?
Did you say ute? Funny. I was driving out of our neighborhood the other night and it's Halloween and there was, I don't know what time it was. It was late. It was like almost midnight.
Right. Guys, this is a gated community. It's pretty small too. There's less than 100 houses.
And I was talking to Howie on the phone. I was coming in. I was like, there's a whole bunch of
utes.
There's a whole bunch of teenagers down the street. Like they're all huddled together. And I was like, those utes. I'm like, oh my God, I've gotten so old. I'm like that person that drives into their neighborhood. Like, what are those utes doing? They shouldn't be out at night. I'm going to go drive by and ask them where their mothers are.
Anyway, we digress horribly.
Okay. Friday. Let's see. Number 12. Do you offer investor pricing for repeat consistent customers? Now, we're not retail clients. We're going to be working with our contractors over and over and over again. Are we going to get any kind of discount for that? I think a lot of contractors like working with investors because we're not emotionally tied to this house. We're not going to be living in this house. We're not going to be as nitpicky about things. We're not going to be choosing one tile and then they install it and we're like, ooh, we don't like that tile. Can you replace it with something else? True story. I know one of our friends that did that was living in the house, made their husband install tiles. She didn't like it. And then she made him uninstall it and put new tile in. But with owner occupied clients, contractors have to deal with a lot of emotions.
That's the biggest issue.
Yeah.
I've done residential contracting in private world, and they are a freaking nightmare. I'm sorry.
Sure, it's hard.
And by the way,
hard.
this same woman that I'm picturing right now, at her job in her own career, is probably the most professional, even keeled.
But when it comes to her house,
but when it comes to their own home,
sure.
people lose their minds.
Yeah.
And so let's just tell it like it is. Yeah. That's the issue. And so contractors do love working for investors because it's a business.
A little less emotional.
And so, yeah, less emotional. I wouldn't say completely unemotional, but less emotional. Yeah. And much more professional and it's much more of a business to business transaction. And they appreciate that, especially if they've been dealing with retail.
Yeah, and I know with us, and we talked about this on the last show that you and I did, is that we're putting almost the same stuff in. I mean, at this point, it's like white shaker cabinets in most of the kitchens, same granite, same kind of flooring. So it's easy. Like our contractor already kind of knows what we're going to be doing. It's
more validate. This is what you want, right?
Correct.
Repo's gray.
Repo's gray, right? Repo's gray. Sherwin-Williams on the walls always. Okay. Number 13. How much of a deposit is required for the work to get started?
Good question.
Yeah. So we typically pay no more than 30% on a project.
You typically pay no more than 30%. I don't go that high.
Well, you're the one usually now dealing with the deposits and all the pay schedules. So how much do we pay?
So there's a little bit of a scale. It really depends. And I don't think that there's any hard answer. It really depends on the size of the job, how quick it's going to job, how much we talked about this materials thing, right? We want them to be capitalized. We want the contractor to be capitalized to a point where they can afford getting some materials and getting the guys on the job and getting the first week's work done and the demo's done and we got this other phase done, and so okay, I'll give you a draw if it's a 6-week project. I might by the end of the second week they get their first draw off their deposit and stuff like that. So in that situation, with kind of the normal job and the demo being the beginning and stuff like that, that deposit is probably going to be between 15 and 20% for me. Okay, if there is an inordinate amount of stuff that has to be procured ahead of time, then, we'll make arrangements for that. So yeah, I mean, contractors love Carrie because she takes super good care of them. I mean, she used to.
I bring them cookies and lunch, and I get them presents for Christmas.
Yeah, you want to treat them well. But she also used to get checks back when we did checks. I've gotten rid of that too.
I used to pay them right away.
She used to go running across, on a Friday evening. She's going to the other side of the metro area. She's gone for 3 hours so she could pay them. Contractors are used to chasing their money.
Yeah, and I'm like, in our world, they don't, because
they don't chase. So we take care of them.
This is why they want to work with us consistently, is because we take care of them. They never have to chase their money. Yeah.
Well,
and we make it easy.
With me, they have to justify the money. But
of course. Okay, there's you guys. Obviously, there's a difference between just giving your money away. But there has to be, and what we're going to talk about this, when we work with our contractors, we have a written out contract with them. Every single project, there's a contract with timelines, there's payment schedules, there's schedules of work being done, there's performance clauses and fines. I mean, it's not like I'm just like, oh, here's some money, I'm making sure that they do the job.
In the beginning, she was kind of like that 10 years ago. Here's the money.
Well, no, I don't think so. I was making sure that the job was
done. And I was back here going, wait.
But I would say in the beginning, we weren't as meticulous when it came to written expectations. I mean, before a project even starts, we have the contracts, we have the timeline, we have the payment schedules, we have everything written out before that project even starts. Because now there will never be a contractor that comes back to us when we're in the middle of the project and we have no draws that are due, and they're like, oh, we need another draw, and we're looking at the schedule saying, hey, we all agreed to this. Plus, unless there's change orders or something happens.
Right. Plus the whole, you said this and you said that.
Right.
No, I didn't.
Expectations are huge. Get everything in writing. If they require a deposit, that's going to be part of the contract. We use our own contracts. Now, some contractors will have their contracts that they like to use. We have a contract that we use. And I would say a majority of the contractors that we work with, they don't have their own contracts. We use ours. And we go through it with them, and every single project. You're
doing rehabs, single family, mostly. You're talking about residential contractors. They are not corporations.
Yes.
They're not.
Right. These aren't like the big $20 million projects. This
no.
is
so if you want to, and I recommend that you do, if you want to bring a level of professionalism, then you're going to be the one that puts together the contracts. You're going to be the one that puts together the schedules. You're going to be the one that puts together. I didn't say it. I said schedules.
Schedules.
You're the one that's going to be putting together the change order, the structure for doing that. All that stuff. You're the one that's got to bring that professionalism to the table and place it upon them. Interestingly enough, at first they're very resistant because to them, they just want to do work. And this is administrative foo-foo stuff to them. But if you stand your ground with them, in the end, they actually will thank you. They're just like, wow, this is clean. This is really clean.
Well, it helps them improve their processes with other clients. Yeah. And I know that with a couple of our contractors, they use the invoicing system now that we use with them. They use now with other clients. I know that they use I don't know if they use your tools like your spreadsheets and stuff.
No, that's a little much for them.
Yeah.
But they use some of the concepts. And it's helped pro them up, and so
to organize their projects with other people.
Yeah. So they've gone from a napkin
to chicken scratch on a napkin to professional tools that they are using with their clients.
And they'll thank you, and you will thank you.
Yes. Okay. Where are we? Number 14. What does the payment schedule for the project look like? So we just went over that. There's got to be a payment schedule. When this work gets done, the next draw is due. When this work gets done, the next draw is due. How are change orders?
Right.
How are they
handled?
I'm losing my train of thought. How are they handled?
So real quick, I touched on this earlier, but let me just kind of run through it just really clear. After the deposit schedule, there should just be some clear draws. So if you have a 6-week project or a 12-week project, you have general building phases. You have the demo phase. You have the rough phase. So this is rough electrical, rough plumbing, any kind of rough structural work. If you're building walls, things like that, all of that kind of stuff is generally the next thing. And then you start to cover up the walls, and you have the paint, and then they don't always go exact. In fact, no two projects ever look alike. But these are the general phases that you're going to go through, all the way to final finishes. Right, the granite is usually like one of the last things. Carpets come in, usually one of the last things, and all that kind of stuff. So you want to schedule this out with them. And then you do kind of like, okay, so on this week, we're going to try and get this done. This week, we're going to try and get this done. This week, we're going to try and get that done. At that point is when you can have a really good conversation about, okay, I'm going to give you the deposit in the beginning. And then when this phase is done, and this phase is done, and then this phase is done, we're going to be done. Now, really quick. The only time you should ever be behind them is at the deposit stage. And what I mean by behind means that you've given them more money than they've done work, is at the deposit stage. Okay. Which is why you need to trust the contractor in the beginning that they're not going to take your deposit and run off. The schedule.
The trust goes both ways too.
The schedule, of course, the schedule should be that once they get past that deposit stage and kind of that first week and a half, however long the job is, week or two at the most, at some point, they are now putting out more service than you have paid them. Right. So now every time that they invoice you, they're catching you up a little bit to them, but you're still a little bit ahead of them. I mean, they've still put out more work than you have money. And you run that all the way to the end, to the final punch list, where it's the white gloves and the blue tape and all of that kind of stuff. Until that's done, then that final should be done. And I always recommend that you hold off at least 10%, but more better. 15%. Final. That should be the final. That should be your final payment to them after all of the punch list items and all of the white glove stuff has been done. So 10 to 15% final to them.
So again, this all gets, this is a question for them, and this all gets put in paper in writing.
Right. So again, the question becomes an expectation.
Correct. Yeah. 15, how do you handle change orders? We talked about that. If we make a change on the project, how does that get handled? Yep. All in writing, right? That gets handled in writing.
Again, this is question, but expectations.
Correct. Yeah. Do you use any kind of software to keep your customers updated on the progress? How do I know what kind of progress is taking place on a daily and weekly basis, right? I don't want to have to be going over there every day to see what the progress is. I want the contractor reaching out to me to give me progress. So how do they give progress updates to their clients? And how do you communicate? And how often do you communicate with me about the progress and the schedule? Okay, again, this is going to tell you a lot about their communication skills, because that is important as well.
And not something contractors are generally known for. Being,
you are generalizing here.
I am generalizing. I'm totally generalizing.
Yeah. Well, again, they get, but I think they get into the project, and they get so focused on the project that, yes, communication does fall by the wayside. And communication is so important when you're renovating a house. You want to know where you are, what the progress is, what the problems are. Communication is huge.
I've been around the trade since I was a kid. Like I said, my father was a contractor. My uncle was a flipper. My best friends were concrete people. That's all I ever did. Like, since I was like 9 years old, I've worked on construction sites. I'm generalizing because there's an element of truth to every generality here. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's generally means there's exceptions. Contractors are not known for their communication skills or their bedside manner.
You guys,
they tend to be a little rough, and they tend to just assume that you know what they know.
Sure.
And you got to, again, get that out now.
Sure.
Okay.
I get it.
All right.
Okay. What are the biggest things that cause delays in the project, and how do you handle them with the customer? So, when you're hiring someone, when you're hiring someone for your business, or maybe you've been hired before, you might get this question: when have you had a problem, and how did you handle it? Right? Like, the person who's hiring you wants to know. There's obviously problems that you've encountered. No one runs their business or themselves perfectly. So what kind of problem have you encountered in your previous job, and how have you handled that? It's kind of the same question for your contractor. What is a problem that you have experienced in one of your projects, and how did you handle it? And if they tell you there's never been any problems, then they're not being forthright, because there's always problems. I mean, if you're a contractor and you're doing work for clients, you run into problems. That's part of the job.
Yeah, if you say none to that, then you lie about other things too.
Never had a problem at any one of our renovations. What are you talking about? Hang up the phone and dial.
Run as fast and as far away.
I want to know how they handled it. Okay, are they being honest? Are they being forthright? Because it's going to tell you a lot about, I think, their character. You want to work with people of high character. Okay. Number 18, do you have a contract that you use with your customers for each project? We typically use our own contracts, and the contractors are fine with that.
I thought we already asked that question.
We did.
It's a twofer. It's a dupe.
That's a dupe. Well, we didn't. Yeah, we answered it because we went off on a tangent with one of our. And then lastly, we always collect a W-9 before they get started, not after we pay them. So can they send us? So before we get started, they filled out W-9, license, a copy of the insurance with potentially us named as additional insured on their policy, the contract between us and them, and then obviously in the contract that's going to have the payment schedule, the timeline for the project, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the things that we're collecting from
this
them.
Last one, this is 19. This W-9 thing is really huge. It's much less trivial than it looks. A W-9 means I'm willing to sign and give you my information so you can give it to the IRS. Mm-hmm. Okay. A contractor who doesn't want to do a W-9 is moving cash.
It's working under the table.
Which means that they're probably going to have trouble with the licensing and the insurance.
You want to work with people who are professional.
You do. You have a lot of liability in this business, guys. You don't want stuff coming back at you because you saved a few bucks with a cheaper contractor who was working under the table and was probably robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I mean, it just goes to that whole line of stuff that you want to stay away from.
We had a very small project recently, and I hired someone to do a really small, it was like fixing the deck or something right before we listed it. So it was only a couple $100. I ran him through just a few questions, but I didn't get his W-9 before, didn't think about it. After we were I wanted to hire him for another project because actually he did great work. He was really communicative. He kind of hit all the bullet points for the small handyman type job that I needed him for. And so I wanted him to try out a bigger project in that area. And so I think at that point I asked him, I said, hey, can you send over a W-9? And he goes, oh, I don't do W-9 work. I was like, Okay, well then you don't do work for us, because if we're going to hire you to do work at our projects, this is all going through our business.
Yeah.
We work professionally. We have to have all of our contractors' W-9s in place. And if you're not willing to do that, then you can't work for us.
Right. And I'll also add this. I'm not a tax professional. I'm not giving tax advice, but for our business, my understanding is that if I'm not W-9ing people, I could get audited by taking that expense and deducting it off my revenue as a legitimate expense. I may not be able to justify that later
as a business expense.
Yeah, as a true business expense. So you're screwing yourself. You could be screwing yourself in that kind of situation, in a tax situation. And so you just want to do things right.
And again, this is going to tell you a lot about the contractor that you're working with. Are they professionally set up to do professional work with you? Because that's who we want to work with.
There's an integrity question there as well.
Yes, there is.
You have to judge for yourself.
Yes, correct. Okay.
I have one last. Was that 19? I have a 20.
You have a 20? Where are you going?
To get 20.
So the last question you want to ask them, you can't hear me. The last question you want to ask them, if they're willing to outfit their crew with one of your hard hats. Can they see this? I'm going the wrong way.
Yes. We don't make our contractors wear that.
I know.
But if they did,
hey, maybe you give them a little discount, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe give them a bonus.
And I would just lastly add, you guys, this goes both ways, right? You want your contractor to treat you professionally. You need to treat your contractors professionally. There's honesty that goes both ways. There's integrity, there's character, that all goes both ways. Yeah. If you want the same contractors working for you on project after project after project, then you need to treat them the way that you want to be treated in your business too. And so when Howie was joking that, I run down to the contractor's
I wasn't joking.
Giving them money.
I was complaining.
But we're not going to delay on things. We're going to, we're just going to show them the respect that they deserve. And after every project, we try to debrief with them what went right, what went wrong. Thank you for this project. We're ready to go on to the next project. I give them, Christmas gifts. They really are like family. We had a appreciation. It was what was it called? Oktoberfest appreciation party. We rented out this space at a little local Italian restaurant, a neighborhood Italian restaurant. And we invited all of our contractors, all of our partners, all of our power team, like title company, attorneys, everyone that we work with. I can't take you seriously with that hat on. Everyone that we work with, in whatever capacity, we invited to this Oktoberfest appreciation dinner, and we had live music and we had appetizers and drinks, and it was so fun. And I can't remember how many people came, but I just remember our electrician was there, our title company agent was there. I mean, it was just so fun. And it was just a way for us to say, hey, we appreciate you for all the work that you have done, because we can't do what we do without the contractors that we have in place, right?
Absolutely.
They make our life way easier. If we had to start over from scratch, it might be difficult. Right? I mean, it's not going to be as difficult now because we have experience and we have this list of questions, but we can't just start a project tomorrow. We'd have to find the right contractor to do that.
That's right.
Tomorrow we could start a project because we have the right power team in place. So
now you can too.
Yeah. All right, you guys. I think that's it. We're coming up on the hour. So enjoy your Friday if you're watching on the live stream. If you're watching on the podcast, it's probably a Monday. So enjoy the rest of your week. And we will talk to you on the next episode. Take care. And remember, you're only one deal away.